If you're defending this, then you're ignorant. And no, I don't mean that you're an ignorant person. What I mean is you don't have all of the facts when it comes to how to take care of these plants. But I'm going to fix that today. So first we're going to walk through why it's a bad idea to top your crepe myrtles because of how it affects the plants. And then we'll run through the common excuses I hear and debunk those and tell them why they're wrong. Because there are a lot of people in the comments that are defending this practice and none of them are correct. So why is it bad to top a crepe myrtle? Well, first of all, you're going to wreck the branching structure permanently. Let's take a look at this picture here. You can see that this is a crepe myrtle that had branches that were about the size of my forearm that were cut off. And then you can see sprouting out of them, you're gonna have 4 or 5 pencil-sized sprouts coming out of each branch. So instead of having a plant that has a natural tapering and then branching structure as it grows taller, you have a very abrupt joint where you have a large branch followed by really small branches. And what this causes is that those smaller branches are going to grow tall and lanky and leggy, as we call it, and that will cause them to be very flimsy. And so you'll end up with problems of droopiness or just overall not strong to resist wind or rain or heavy blooms, which is one of the main complaints that people have about crepe myrtles. So by following proper pruning techniques and allowing these branches to naturally grow taller and longer and taper and branch the way they want to, then you're going to have a much stronger structure for the plant. The next issue is you are putting an unnecessary strain onto the energy reserves of your plant. So by every year going in and cutting off all of those branches, you're actually taking away the hard work that the tree was doing to produce those branches. So it has to have an output of energy in order to grow all of those branches, but it doesn't get to reap the benefits of keeping them for multiple years, which is slowly going to deplete the plant of its energy reserves, which probably isn't going to kill it, but it will make it more susceptible to pests and diseases, such as crepe myrtle bark scale and aphids. The next problem you're going to have is somewhat of a cruel irony. People think that by cutting back their crepe myrtles, they're going to get more blooms, when actually the opposite is likely to be true. You see, by cutting off all of those branches, before your plant can bloom, it's going to have to regrow those branches, which is going to take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. So if you have two identical crepe myrtles side by side, cut one, leave the other, this one is going to bloom anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks sooner than the one that was cut. And in many regions, you can actually get 2 or 3 bloom cycles of crepe myrtle when they are left to be natural, because they're going to bloom in the spring or maybe late spring, then they're going to grow, and then they're going to bloom again for that secondary bloom cycle. By cutting them off, you may not get to enjoy that secondary or third round of blooms. The next issue I have with cutting the tops off is it's just ugly. I mean, I would never want to have this in front of my home or in front of my business. When you cut them off, it's going to be hideous until months later when it actually regrows and starts looking good again. And you are robbing yourself of one of the prettiest dormant trees that exists. Not only can a properly pruned crepe myrtle tree have beautiful branching structure that just looks wonderful in the landscape, but they have some of the prettiest bark of any tree on the planet. Now let's walk through the common excuses I hear as to why people are still doing this. The first one I hear is my tree is just too big for the spot that it's in, and that is a fair point. It is very common for builders or homeowners or landscapers to see a crepe myrtle in a nursery and they're quite small and end up planting them too close to a structure or a home. And that can certainly be problematic and is probably the #1 reason why I see people cut them off. But I want to introduce you to something that a lot of people apparently don't know about, and that is dwarf and semi-dwarf crepe myrtles. With the new genetics of crepe myrtles that are on the market, there is one that will fit in just about any spot in the landscaping because they start as short as 2 foot high for maturity and they have everything in between. So you don't have to have a crepe myrtle that gets to be 30 feet tall. You can find one that is 8 feet tall or 15 feet tall if that fits your space better. So if you're constantly having to hack that tree every year to try to make it fit a spot, it may be time to just go ahead and bite the bullet and have that thing removed and placed something there that's a more appropriate size. because that's a lot of work to cut and haul off those branches every year or money to pay someone to do it. The next excuse I hear is, it doesn't ever kill them, just cut them. Just because it doesn't kill them doesn't mean it's good for them. That's almost like saying, I keep my dog in a kennel all the time and they don't die. Yeah, that doesn't kill them, but it's certainly not good for them to do that. And lastly, I hear this a lot, all the landscapers do it. Are they all wrong? And the answer is yes. Now, I work closely with a lot of landscapers, and most of them are wonderful people, but most of them are not trained horticulturists. Landscapers get paid to do stuff, and if they can go in during the slow season, which is winter, and do some trimming and cutting and hauling off of branches, that means they get paid more. If your landscaper offers to top your crepe myrtles for you, they are not looking out for the best interests of that plant. They're looking out for their pocketbooks, and I can't really blame them for that. Okay, and then the next question I get is, what if my crepe myrtles have already been topped? How can I fix it? You can go through, like my last video, and do selective pruning and make them look decent after several years. But the option that I actually like better is a little bit more drastic than that. In cases where you have a very misshapen or ugly crepe myrtle, I actually cut them all the way down to the ground. And you just do this one time, and what it does is it essentially resets them. So the following year, they're going to sprout about 20 or 30 sprouts out of the ground, and it's going to look like a bush. And then the following year, what you can do is select 3 or 5 of the nicest trunks and then prune away everything else. And this, you're going to retrain this plant to be a tree again. And after about 3 or 4 years, you're going to have a beautiful retrained tree form crepe myrtle. So hopefully you've got all the facts now, and you'll know what to do when your neighbor tells you to cut your crepe myrtle off. You can just send them this video.